This is every single thing you need to know about the Elfnote archetype for Master Duel. Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with a full in-depth guide for Elfnote. Now, like we did last time with Cooltoon, we're going to break down the entire archetype. We're going to look at all of the individual cards, review their roles, what they do, how many copies you'll need. We'll see some example combo lines from both waves of support. Much like Cooltoon, Elfnote does have multiple waves, and we'll discuss the most likely builds that will be in Master Duel and explore each of them. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to stay tuned for the video. Before we get into it though, I want to give a huge shout out right up top to our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. If you're eager to see YouTube content like this early, then I would definitely recommend joining as a member down below next to the subscribe button. You get to see all uploads early, sometimes even up to a week early, because I tend to batch upload and then release them as the week goes. On top of that, you'll get your name featured at the end credits of every video, and there's even some exclusive members-only content on the YouTube channel. Over on patreon.com/hexlex, I actually upload 3 times a week over there content that doesn't make it over to YouTube. We often look at new card reveals, replays I don't always have time to get to, metagame breakdowns, just stuff that I want to talk about, but I don't think necessarily would make for a good YouTube video, among other Q&As and other sorts of content. Over there on patreon.com/hexlex, you'll also get thanked at the end credits of every video. I really appreciate the support from YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. I really could not do it without your help. So now that that's out of the way, let's get right on into the Elfnote cards and just how powerful they will be in Master Duel. Alright, let's get right into each of these cards, starting with Elfnote Power Patron. This is a level 1 Fire Fiend Tuner effect monster with 300 attack and 200 defense. It says you cannot special summon from the extra deck except synchro monsters. You can only use each of the following effects of Elfnote Power Patron once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one monster in your center main monster zone, increase its level by 3 until the end of this turn, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon one Elfnote synchro monster or one Junora the Power Patron of Tuning. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can add one Elfnote card from your deck to your hand. We're already starting to see some of the key things that Elfnote really cares about in this first card. The main thing being the center main monster zone. Zone placement really matters for Elfnote, as a lot of their monsters will have bonus effects that they gain when they are in specifically the center main monster zone, or in this case for Elfnote Power Patron, it'll buff the level of whatever monster happens to be there. On top of that, it enables some quick synchro plays, and can even search cards when it goes to the graveyard as synchro material. It's a very important card for the archetype, but it's not one I would call a starter. It's pretty searchable by a lot of other cards. From what I can tell in my research, most builds seem to play 2. You could, in theory, play 1 or 3, but I'm just going to recommend 2, as it seems across the board that tends to be the way to go. Elfnote Fortuna is a level 6 light spellcaster effect monster with 2200 attack and 1800 defense. It states, you can special summon this card from your hand to the center main monster zone. You can only special summon Elfnote Fortuna once per turn this way. You can only use each of the following effects of Elfnote Fortuna once per turn. During your main phase, you can place one Elfnote Continuous Trap from your hand or deck face up on your field. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can switch the locations of this card in your main monster zone and the monster in your center main monster zone. Then, you can return one face-up spell or trap card on the field to the hand. Another good example of what a lot of the Elfnote cards really care about. A lot of them are these level 6 spellcaster monsters. This one can special from hand. Much like sprite monsters, it's not actually an effect that activates, it just special summons, so that's always really nice. It places a face-up Elfnote continuous trap card from your deck. Another theme we'll see among this archetype is they have a lot of continuous spell and trap cards. Also, a lot of these Elfnote cards will have various disruption effects that activate by either being in the center main monster zone or swapping into the center main monster zone. Here, Fortuna gets to bounce a spell or trap card, a face-up one in particular. Not necessarily the most exciting effect, but there are a lot of combos that rely on a continuous or a field spell, and if you bounce that as it resolves, it actually will not end up resolving. So, it can be useful for that effect too. All in all though, I think you really only need one copy of this card. It's not a starter, although it does play a pretty important role in your combo line, so just the one searchable copy I think is all you're going to need. Elfnote Lucina is a level 6 fire spellcaster effect monster with 2500 attack and 1800 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand to your center main monster zone. You can only special summon Elfnote Lucina once per turn this way. You can only use each of the following effects of Elfnote Lucina once per turn. During your main phase, you can add an Elfnote monster from your deck to your hand except Elfnote Lucina. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can switch the locations of this card in your main monster zone and the monster in your center main monster zone. Then you can return one level 6 or lower monster your opponent controls to the hand. So pretty similar to Fortuna, which we just reviewed, and this one is a bit different. It adds Elfnote monsters, which is obviously a pretty strong effect, especially once the second wave of support comes out, but we're going to talk about that separately. Also, a pretty solid quick effect for the opponent's turn. Being able to bounce any level 6 or lower monster is a great way to screw up your opponent's combo lines. This does actually end up being a pretty solid card for the deck, both as a starter and extender. You're going to want 3 copies of it as a result. Elfnote Tinia is a level 6 water spellcaster effect monster, 2400 attack, 1800 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand to your center main monster zone. You can only special summon Elfnote Tinia once per turn this way. You can only use each of the following effects of Elfnote Tinia once per turn. During your main phase, you can place one Elfnote continuous spell from your deck face up on your field. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can switch the locations of this card in your main monster zone and the monster in your center main monster zone. Then you can banish face up one random card from your opponent's hand until the end phase. So this one sets up continuous spells, similar to how Fortuna sets up the continuous trap cards. This one is also capable of hand ripping, which is obviously traditionally a really, really powerful type of effect. It's also at any point during the opponent's turn. So it doesn't have to be during the main phase or any other specific timing, meaning you could do it as early as the very beginning of their turn, right after they draw, or if you'd rather they wait and play some more cards in their hand, then you can try to thin out whatever their last card they're trying to push through your, disruptions is. Either way, it is a very strong effect, and the continuous spells for this archetype do tend to be quite good, or at least one in particular that I'm thinking of. So as a result, you do tend to play 3 copies of this card in your Elfnote decks. You can go down to 2 occasionally. I saw like maybe 1 or 2 builds only playing 2, but the vast majority definitely want to be playing 3. Elfnote Seraphim Strelitzia. I'm sure I butchered that either way, is a level 7 fire plant synchro effect monster with 0 attack and 3000 defense. The materials are generic. It's 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. This card's original attack becomes 3000 while in the center main monster zone. During the main phase, quick effect, you can special summon 1 level 6 or lower Elfnote monster from your hand or graveyard. Then, you can reduce the levels of all level 4 or higher monsters on the field by 3 until the end of this turn. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, except synchro monsters. You can only use this effect of Elfnote Seraphim Strelitzia once per turn. A very interesting boss/end board piece for the Elfnote archetype. So, not only is it an extender in that you can summon it during your turn 1 combo and then keep comboing by reviving an Elfnote monster, but it's actually also disruption as well. During your opponent's turn, you can not only revive an Elfnote monster, which keep in mind they all have quick effects that either let you synchro summon in the case of Power Patron, or the spellcasters have various disruption effects. Not only can you summon one of those, but on top of that, you can also adjust the levels of all level 4 or higher monsters on the field, which will really screw up a good portion of decks, right? Synchro and Xyz-based decks, chief among them. Cool Tune, of course, at the time of this video's recording and release, is a very prominent deck in the metagame, and as a result, this card has a very natural counter to that. If your opponent's Cool Tune monsters have their level bumped up by 3, they're going to have a hard time making the exact synchro monsters they want to summon, right? On top of that, as mentioned, there's Xyz decks. Even a lot of Link monsters state that they require like a level 4 lower monster of a certain type or attribute or archetype. So there's a lot of really good opportunities to mess up your opponent's plays here. As far as how many copies of this card you want, it's in the extra deck, so you only really need the 1 copy. I did find a couple of builds that were on 2, so if you pull a second one, you could think about hanging on to it, but you're really only going to need the 1 for most Elfnote builds. Junora, the Power Patron of Tuning, is a level 10 Fire Fiend Synchro effect monster with 3,100 attack and 3,800 defense. The material requirements are 1 tuner plus 2 non-tuners, not 2 or more, exactly 2. So 1 tuner plus 2 non-tuners, always going to use 3 monsters to make this. For this card's Synchro Summon, you can treat 1 monster in your center main monster zone as a tuner. If this card is Synchro Summoned, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent controls. Quick effect. You can activate this effect. Monsters your opponent controls in the same column as the Elfnote monsters you control cannot be used as material for a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link summon until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Junora, the Power Patron of Tuning, once per turn. So, this is an extremely powerful boss monster, and one that you will often be summoning during your opponent's turn through Elfnote Power Patron. Because when it is Synchro Summoned, as mentioned, it negates all of your opponent's face-up cards, every single one of them that's currently face-up on their field. So obviously, summoning this during your opponent's turn is ideal. This also has even more ways of messing with your opponent's ability to make extra deck monsters, right? We saw the last Elfnote Synchro monster adjusted levels, which screws with Synchro and Xyz plays, but this just straight up says that your opponent's monsters in columns across from Elfnote cards, again, they cannot be used for Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link Summon. Now, one thing you have to remember is this is not an Elfnote monster. Yes, it is the boss monster of your Elfnote deck, but it does not actually have Elfnote in its name, meaning any monster across from Junora can still be used for Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link Summon. I already know I'm going to see somebody make this misplay when I play against this deck at some point, but it's a very understandable one, right? Again, it's really easy to go autopilot mode and assume that your boss monster of an Elfnote deck is an Elfnote monster, but it's not. So you do have to remember that when you're using this card. It is also a lingering effect until the end of the turn. It's not just at the time you activate those monsters across from Elfnote cards. No, it's for the rest of the turn. So if you revive an Elfnote monster later, then monsters across from it still will not be able to be used as materials. Much like the other Synchro monster for Elfnote, you really only need 1 copy of this card, but you're gonna want the 1. It is an extremely powerful boss monster. Alright, getting into the spell cards for Elfnote, we're going to start with the continuous spell Elfnote's Welcome Home. It says, the monster in your center main monster zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can send 1 monster from your hand or field to the graveyard, special summon 1 Elfnote monster with a different original attribute from your deck in defense position. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except Synchro monsters. You can only use the effect of Elfnote's Welcome Home once per turn. A very solid card. It can be used to get your plays kickstarted in, some particularly less than ideal scenarios. But if you open this with a hand trap, I mean, in theory, if it's the right attribute, again, that could be enough to get some amount of plays going. It does lock you into Synchro Summoning, which for the Elfnote archetype itself doesn't really matter, but you'll often pair Elfnote with Fiendsmith. So just keep in mind that if you use this, you won't be able to do Fiendsmith plays afterward. Welcome Home is a card that you will play in pretty much every Elfnote deck. As far as how many copies, I saw it was a relatively even split between 1 or 2 copies between a lot of builds in my research, which makes sense, right? It's searchable and an extender, so you don't really need 3, but at the same time, as mentioned, it can get you out of some jams potentially. So yeah, I would say 1 to 2 copies is more than enough for your Elfnote deck. Elfnote's A Plea for Help is another continuous spell card for the archetype. Your opponent cannot target the monster in your center main monster zone with card effects. This card gains the appropriate effect based on the attributes of the monster in your center main monster zone. Fire or Earth. If your Synchro monster attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent. Water or wind, other face-up spell or trap cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Light or dark, you take no battle damage. So this is the first of the Elfnote cards we're going to talk about. That's actually not really that great. I mean, it's just really situational. In a way, like, obviously the archetype has a bunch of different attributes, so there is a way to cycle, then get the effect you want. But a lot of the time, the monster in your center zone is going to be fire. Most Elfnote monsters tend to be fire. And even then, like, it's like, okay, you could argue that even if the piercing effect that you're going to get a lot of the time isn't that great, you could still go for the other effects, but those other effects also really aren't that great. Protecting your other face-up spell or trap cards really doesn't matter at all 99.99% of the time, and not taking battle damage is nice, but just sitting there and not taking damage isn't really going to win you the duel, right? So at the end of the day, this is going to be the first Elfnote card that I just hard recommend 0 copies. Don't play this one. You don't need it. There are much better cards within this archetype. Alright, now going into the continuous trap cards, Elfnote's Rhapsody of Madness. While you control a monster in your center main monster zone, your opponent's monsters cannot attack except to attack that monster. You can send one monster from your hand or field to the graveyard, then target one Elfnote monster in your graveyard with a different original attribute. Special summon it, then if you control a synchro monster, you can negate the effects of one face-up card your opponent controls until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Elfnote's Rhapsodia of Madness once per turn. So this card is excellent, and this is a continuous trap card that you want to be setting up with your Fortuna, right? Yeah, that's the one that sets up trap cards. You definitely want to be setting up this one. Not only is it an extender, and because it can be set up with Fortuna, you can actually use it on turn 1 as an extender, but then if you have any synchro monster out, doesn't even need to be an Elfnote one or Junora, the power patron of tuning. As long as you have any synchro monster in play, you can also get a negate. So this is another one of those extender and disruption cards rolled into one. Very, very good for the deck. You're going to want 1 copy in every single Elfnote deck. Alright, the next continuous trap card for the archetype Elfnote's Arestia of Trust. Once per turn, you can target one face-up monster you control, move that monster you control to another of your main monster zones. When your opponent activates a spell or trap card, while you control 3 or more Elfnote monsters, you can negate that effect. Then, if you control a synchro monster, you can destroy that card. You can only use this effect of Elfnote's Arestia of Trust once per turn. You cannot activate these effects of Elfnote's Arestia of Trust in the same chain. So, at the end of the day, this card, like, it looks really solid because it's a spell/trap card negate, but it's a little bit too situational to try to set up. It's not that hard to have 3 or more Elfnote monsters, but, like, by the time you've got 3 or more Elfnote monsters out, you don't really need a spell or trap card negate that badly. I will say that having the destroy for a spell or trap card isn't as important as for a monster, because if it's a normal spell or trap card, it's going to go to the graveyard anyway, and a lot of field or continuous spell or trap cards only activate either, you know, when they're activated or when they use the effect. Now, granted, this can only respond to an opponent activating a spell or trap card, not a spell or trap card effect. That's an important distinction, and actually does end up making this just a little bit weaker. This is one of those cards where, like, it's almost good enough. If you really wanted to play a single copy, I guess I wouldn't fault you, but at the same time, we already have the Rhapsodia of Madness, which can negate any face-up card, including spell or trap cards, and again provides extension on top of that. So this really just ends up being unnecessary. I would recommend 0 copies. I guess you could play 1 if you really, really want to. It wouldn't be horrible, but I don't think it's needed. Okay, so that's everything for Wave 1 of Elfnote, but as mentioned, like many other archetypes, Elfnote does get a secondary wave. So here are the cards from that wave. Starting with Elfnote Regina is a level 6 wind spellcaster effect monster that says quick effect. You can send one other Elfnote card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned to the center main monster zone, you can special summon one Elfnote monster from your deck except Elfnote Regina. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Elfnote Regina once per turn. So yeah, wow, this is like straight up Elfnote circular. This one card really fixes the entire archetype, and is a lot of the reason, I would even dare say the vast majority of the reason, as to why Elfnote becomes such a house once it gets its second wave of support. The special summoning from hand effect, unlike the other Elfnote monsters, does activate, but it's also a quick effect, so it can be used on your opponent's turn. And you'll actually pretty often be doing that, because even if you use this card during turn 1 for comboing, when you send it as synchro material, it just wheels itself right back to your hand. So, a reason why this card's sending an Elfnote card from your field to the graveyard to summon itself is actually pretty important, is because it can get whatever monster is in your center main monster zone out, so you can summon this card to the center main monster zone. Of course, once it is summoned that way, you can start special summoning more Elfnote monsters from your deck, which is obviously not only really good for comboing on turn 1, but if you're using this on your opponent's turn, you can start pulling out Elfnote monsters from your deck, and then they can start using their disruption effects on your opponent's turn. Just a phenomenal card. Exactly what the archetype needed. As mentioned, this is straight up Elfnote circular. You're going to want 3 copies of this every single time. Ridiculous card for the archetype. Junoldo, the Shade Spirit Power Patron. Okay, so something that's important to know is that Power Patron does eventually also become its own archetype. So I won't be reviewing every single one of those cards here. However, because this one does support Elfnote and is always treated as an Elfnote card, I'll talk about this one specifically here. So it's a level 10 Fiend Pendulum Effect monster with 300 attack and 200 defense. Pend scale of 1. Pendulum Effect. If a Power Patron or Elfnote monster is special summoned to your field, while this card is in your Pendulum zone, except during the damage step, you can destroy this card, and if you do, draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. You can only use this effect of Junoldo, the Shade Spirit of Power Patron, once per turn. Okay, so monster effect. This card is always treated as an Elfnote card. You can banish the top 3 cards of your deck, face down, destroy this card, and if you do, special summon 1 Junora, the Power Patron of Tuning, from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon. If this card is added to your extra deck face up, you can add 1 Power Patron or Elfnote card from your face up extra deck or graveyard to your hand, except Junoldo, the Shade Spirit Power Patron. You can only use each effect of Junoldo, the Shade Spirit Power Patron, once per turn. So as far as like how this card incorporates into Elfnote, it's obviously pretty solid. It's one of those cards that like you don't really need it for the combo line. Even the full power combo line doesn't really incorporate this card, at least not every single time. However, it's obviously still a pretty solid card to have, right? Because of its ability to cheat out one of your strongest boss monsters if you can manage to summon this card. It is level 10, so you can't just like normal summon it, but of course, Elfnote does have ways of getting its own monsters out. On top of that, the Pend scale effect, I think is going to be one of the more relevant ones here, and getting a free draw 2 discard 1 is never bad, especially for a deck like this. I mean, for any deck, really. They all really like having an effect like that. So, from what I could tell, the builds in the OCG that I found were pretty much all playing 2 copies of this card. Well, 1 or 2. It did seem to vary a little bit, so I'll recommend 1 or 2 copies. It's not, like, hugely needed for your combos, but it's just really nice to have. It's a bit niche, but it fulfills a lot of roles that are still really solid, like, again, drawing more cards and cheating out your strongest synchro monster. June Pride Elfnotes is a level 10 light spellcaster synchro effect monster with 3100 attack, 1800 defense. Material requirements are 1 tuner plus 1 spellcaster, non-tuner. While this card is in the center main monster zone, neither player can declare attacks except with monsters in the center main monster zones. During the main phase, if this card is in the center main monster zone, quick effect. You can return it to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon up to 1 Elfnote monster from each your hand, deck, and graveyard. You can only use this effect of June Pride Elfnotes once per turn. I think this was technically part of a 3rd wave of support, like, I think it was a standalone card that got released relatively recently, so I don't know if we'll see it at the same time as the other second wave cards, but still wanted to talk about it here. It's very solid. Like, obviously, being able to quick effect cheat out a bunch of Elfnote cards, one each from your hand, deck, and graveyard, is really good. And thanks to Regina's effect to add itself back to your hand as a synchro material, or when it's used as a synchro material, you'll often summon one from each your hand, deck, and graveyard, right? It's pretty easy to do so. And if you put that Regina in the center main monster zone, you could even get out a 4th Elfnote monster from your deck, and then you can start swapping with the other Elfnote monsters what's in the center, and then get your various disruption effects. There are, of course, other level 10 synchro monsters, even within the archetype. There's Junora, there's also Baron de Fleur and Chaos Angel, but I think that this card is really, really solid, and even though it only just relatively recently got released, like actually about a week ago, I think in the OCG, it's already seeing play in a fair amount of Elfnote builds. I don't think it's necessary, so I'll go 0 to 1 is what I'll say here, but it's definitely not a bad idea to pick a copy up for your Elfnote extra deck. Elfnote's Quatrain of Succession is a continuous trap card for the archetype. The monster in your center main monster zone cannot be banished by your opponent's card effects. You can send one of their spell or trap cards from your hand or field to the graveyard and declare a level from 1 to 4. Special summon one Elfnote Seraphim token, which is a plant tuner fire monster with 0 attack and defense with the declared level. But while that token is in the main monster zone, or in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon from the extra deck except Elfnote monsters. You can only use this effect of Elfnote's Quatrain of Succession once per turn. So this card is like just really, really niche, both in its protection effect and its actual effect as well. It's kind of weird to put the effect that summons a tuner on a trap card, because the only real way to quick synchro in this deck is Elfnote Power Patron, which is already a tuner. So I think that's a lot of the reason why this card kind of falls flat. It also just doesn't do anything that your Elfnote deck already can't do, right? Like, yeah, being able to summon a token that's a tuner and any level from 1 to 4, like, don't get me wrong, that's handy, that's nice, but does Elfnote, like, desperately need that? I think the answer is actually no. Again, with the Elfnote Power Patron, you can already tune for all the things you need to. And again, the fact that this card doesn't let you quick synchro with the tuner that you make on a trap card makes it a little just even that much more, like, why is this card here? 0 copies. You don't need any copies of this, I think, for your Elfnote deck. Alright, so the Elfnote archetype is part of the overall Medius the Pure lore, which means there are various archetypes, Archmage, Doomsday, and now Elfnote, that all tie back to Medius the Pure. As a result, I do want to talk about this monster and a couple of cards that specifically support it, because you will see them in your Elfnote decks, right? Starting with Medius the Pure, is a level 4 Dark Fairy effect monster with 1800 attack and defense. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add to your hand or special summon one Power Patron monster from your deck. If this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one monster from your hand or face-up field into the deck, and if you do special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Medius the Pure once per turn. So it's pretty obvious to see why this card is good in your deck, right? You normal summon this, you special summon Elfnote Power Patron from your deck, and then you're off to the races. There are obviously a lot of different archetypes that really benefit from Medius the Pure because of its ability to summon any Power Patron from the deck. As always, that does leave the potential for hybrid builds open, but I think until the follow-up support for Power Patron comes out, when Power Patron truly becomes its own archetype, I think until then, I wouldn't necessarily try to mix Elfnote with like Archmage or Doomsday. But you could, I guess, if you really wanted to. Yeah, for Medius the Pure, it's actually a pretty solid starter within the archetype. But the archetype is already really consistent. The majority of builds that I saw were playing 2, but I saw some playing 3, and I saw some only playing 1. So I'll put 1 to 3 here, but I'm going to say 2. If you're looking for one solid answer, again, the vast majority of builds I found were playing 2 copies of Medius the Pure. Theorealize is a normal spell card for Medius the Pure. It says send one Medius the Pure from your deck to the graveyard, look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and place it on the top or bottom of the deck. you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one face-up monster you control and declare one monster type and one attribute. That monster becomes the type and attribute until the end of your opponent's turn. You can only use each effect of Theorealize once per turn. So if you remember back to Medius the Pure, it does have the effect where if it's in your graveyard, you can shuffle any monster from your hand or field back into the deck and then summon this monster. So that's another way of getting Medius the Pure online to then go into your full combo line. So whether or not you use this card and how many copies kind of depends on how much of the actual support for Medius the Pure is released, right? I think it's weird. So I'm gonna put 1 to 3 copies of a recommendation, but I'll say this. If we do get the follow-up Power Patron support, then I'll talk about a spell card you would use over Theorealize. And in that case, you would only maybe want to play 1 copy of Theorealize, but probably more likely 0. However, until that follow-up Power Patron support comes out, this is one of the best ways to access Medius the Pure. And again, until that follow-up Power Patron support comes out, from what I could tell, most builds were on 3 copies of Theorealize. So I'll put 0 to 3. It just super depends on, again, how much of this Power Patron support ends up coming out. Vidolium, the unstable Power Patron of Unity. So when I talk about using Medius the Pure for like this overarching Power Patron archetype, this is kind of the boss monster of that archetype. But it does also see play in a lot of OCG Elfnote, I almost called it Medius the Pure, Elfnote builds. So I did still want to talk about it here. It is a level 12 Dark Fairy Pendulum effect monster with 5,000 attack and 0 defense, and a pentascale of 11. Pendulum effect, you can activate one of these effects. Destroy this card, and if you do, special summon 1 Power Patron monster from your hand or graveyard. Destroy this card. Also this turn, Power Patron monsters you control whose original level is 12 gain 5,000 attack. You can only use this effect of Vidolium, the unstable Power Patron of Unity, once per turn. The monster effect states cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your face-up extra deck or graveyard by returning 1 Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monster from your face-up field and or graveyard to the extra deck. If this card is added to your extra deck face-up, you can add 1 Power Patron card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Vidolium, the unstable Power Patron of Unity, once per turn. If this card is special summoned, banish, face down, all cards from the graveyards, unaffected by monster effects except Power Patron monsters. So it's a giant 5k towers, basically. Doesn't have protection against spell or trap cards. That can also wipe out the graveyards, which is a very, very strong effect. It might seem like it's a little bit difficult to get out, right? But you gotta remember that a lot of the time in Elfnotes, you're also gonna be playing a Fiendsmith engine. So obviously Elfnotes can spit out Synchro monsters no problem. And then Fiendsmith can very easily generate Fusion and Xyz monsters, right? Even if you're just using the bare bones Fiendsmith engine, you've got Necroquip and Caesar. So this ends up being a really solid card for like turn 3 follow-up, or just like going second as well. You can wipe the graveyard, stop any disruption from there. Again, it's a towers against monster effects. It's 5,000 attack, so it's really rough to run over. And even on top of that, if you're not summoning this monster, you can still just use the pentascale effect and summon back your Elfnote Power Patrons from the graveyard, or special summon it from your hand if you need to. So it's a very interesting addition. It does see play in most Elfnote builds in the OCG. Anywhere from 1 to 2 copies. Some aren't playing it, but I will end up recommending, I think, I'll put 0 to 2 just to be safe, but again, the majority of builds, from what I could tell, were on a single copy of this card. Prohibited Power Patron Portal Terminus is a normal spell card that is, again, part of the follow-up Power Patron archetype support. It says send 1 Power Patron monster from your deck or extract to the graveyard, then you can add 1 Dark Fairy monster from your deck to your hand. Also, you cannot declare attacks for the rest of the turn, except with Power Patron monsters. At the start of the damage step, if your Power Patron monster battles an opponent's monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, banish face down that opponent's monster. You can only use each effect of Prohibited Power Patron Portal Terminus once per turn. So, remember when I said earlier that there was a spell card in the Power Patron archetype that once it comes out you don't need Theorealize anymore? This is that card. So, Theorealize just sends Medius the Pure from your deck to the graveyard. Then, with Medius's effect, you have to shuffle a monster from your hand, or face-up field, back into the deck to revive Medius, use its effect, and then go into your Elfnote combo line. This, however, the Power Patron portal, that kind of cuts out the middleman, right? You don't have to shuffle a monster back, you can just send one of your Elfnote Power Patrons or another Power Patron monster directly from your deck or extract to the graveyard, then just add Medius the Pure. Then you don't have to shuffle a monster from your hand back into the deck. So, between this and Theorealize, it's pretty simple. If Terminus is legal, you play 3 of it, and then for Theorealize, you could play maybe 1, but probably 0 copies. But if this card is not yet legal, then you're going to want a full playset of Theorealize. So, again, which card you play and how many copies really just depends on what is released in Master Duel, or what is legal at the time in general. But it is a very solid card. Obviously, again, Medius the Pure is a really good starter, so being able to search it is very good. And if this card is legal, you're probably just going to want 3 copies. You could play 2 if you really wanted to, but I would just recommend probably 3 for your deck. And the final card I'm going to talk about for Medius the Pure support, but it does also mention Elfnote, is going to be Patro-Ral Theorealize. Much like June Pride, the Elfnote Synchro monster, this only very recently got released in the OCG, so it might be some time before we see it in Master Duel, but again, felt pertinent to cover it here. It's a normal spell card that says, if you control an Archmage, Doomsday, or Elfnote card, special summon 1 Medius the Pure from your hand or deck. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when that monster is special summoned. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster in your graveyard, special summon it to your zone a Link monster points to. You can only use 1 Patro-Ral Theorealize, only effect per turn, and only once that turn. So you can't activate it and use a graveyard effect in the same turn, basically. Yeah, this card is a decent extender, but I will say that I think that the Power Patron Portal Terminus, I believe it was called, that card is just a better way of getting access to Medius the Pure, because Patro Theorealize, like, it can special summon it, it doesn't just add it, but you do have to already control an Elfnote card, which isn't that big of a deal, but if you open it with obviously a bunch of off-engine, you can't really make use of it. The Terminus, however, if you open that with a bunch of off-engine, then you're able to just add Medius the Pure, normal summon it, and go full combo, which does end up making it a little bit better. So, I haven't really seen many Elfnote builds take advantage of this spell card, unlike June Pride, which again I have seen some pick that card up and start using it. So I don't know if I can really recommend this one. I'll say, like, I guess, I'll just say 0 for now. I could be wrong about this. This could be one that does end up seeing play later, just because it, again, very recently got released in the OCG. It's hard to tell, but from what I can tell, just reading these cards, the Terminus does seem like the more favorable version of this effect, so I'll just go ahead and recommend 0 for now. Now that we have a good grasp of what all the different Elfnote cards are and do, I'm going to show you some combo lines. We're going to start with a Wave 1 combo line. I like separating the combo lines into these different waves, because we don't know exactly yet how many of the Elfnote cards we're going to get in Master Duel, and it's also a nice way of seeing exactly how the combo line evolves and improves with each release. So, starting with the Wave 1 combo line, this is going to be the line with Medius the Pure as our starter. For the Wave 1 line, you also need any other monster card to send later. So, alright, going into our main phase, we're going to normal summon Medius the Pure, and then activate to special summon the Power Patron Elfnote from our deck. Now, we're going to synchro into our Medius Keeper of the Boundaries, going 4+1 using those 2. And that's because we're on the Fiendsmith build. This is a light Fiend, which means that we can pivot into Fiendsmith this way, while also progressing our Elfnote combo line. So, If you are not playing Fiendsmith, then instead of putting Elfnote Power Patron in a random monster zone, you would want to put it in the center monster zone. That way you could bump its level from 1 up to 3, making it a level 4. Then you could tune Elfnote Power Patron plus Medius the Pure into the Psyframe Gear Omega, which I believe, yes, is in my extra deck here. Psyframe Lord Omega. So if you're not playing Fiendsmith, you could instead just play Omega, hand rip your opponent, and then proceed with the combo line in the exact same way after we summon Caesar. But again, I'm going to show you with the Fiendsmith stuff. So, as mentioned, we're going to go into our Medius Keeper of the Boundaries. Now, when the Elfnote Power Patron is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, we get to add an Elfnote monster from our deck to our hand. That's why we synchro into our Medius, by the way, instead of just linking into Moon of Closed Heaven. So now we can go Armades into Fiendsmith's Requiem. I'm on a minimal Fiendsmith package here, so what we're going to do is we're going to summon Engraver, equip the Requiem to the Engraver, send both for Necroquip, Engraver put back Armades to revive, and now there's our Caesar. Once we've got that established, we're protected from Nibiru, and we have some extra disruption going into our opponent's turn. But again, if you wanted to, instead of playing Fiendsmith, just go into Omega and Hand Rip, you could do that, and then from here, you would pick up the Elfnote combo line by special summoning the Tinia that you added earlier off of the Elfnote Power Patron to your center main monster zone. Tinia effect activates. We're going to add, or rather place the Elfnote's Welcome Home from our deck to our field. Welcome Home effect is going to send away the Tinia in our center main monster zone to special summon out Lucina. Very important, do not put Lucina in the center main monster zone. She does not need to be there in order to search a monster card. So we're going to use Lucina's effect in order to search out the Fortuna. Fortuna's effect special summon herself to the center main monster zone. That's why we didn't put Lucina there. So now she can place the Rhapsodia of Madness from our deck onto the field. We're going to go Rhapsodia effect. We're going to send the monster that's in our hand. That's why this is a 1.5 card combo with any other monster in hand. We're going to send the monster in hand, and now we can revive Elfnote Power Patron, and then we're going to tune into the Seraphim in the center main monster zone. Then we can use Seraphim's effect in order to revive the Tinia, and this is basically going to be our end board going into the opponent's turn. Looks a little bit weird, right? Like we have some of these random level 6 spellcasters out, but keep in mind, of course, each of these Elfnote monsters has their own disruption effect. So going into the opponent's turn, you could, during their draw phase, activate Tinia's effect, swap it with the Seraphim in the center main monster zone in order to banish a random face-up card from the opponent's hand. That's also why you want to put Seraphim in the middle, specifically. That way any of your Elfnotes can swap to it. Now going into their main phase, let's say your opponent summons a monster and you want to bounce it. You could use Lucina to swap with Tinia and then bounce one of their monsters. At that point, after doing that, you could activate Seraphim, revive the Elfnote Power Patron, and then that would also change the levels of all level 4 higher monsters by 3, reducing them specifically by 3. This could not only potentially mess up some of your opponent's plays, but it'll also change the levels of your Elfnote monsters. By using Elfnote Power Patron to make your Tinia level 6 again, you can go 1 plus 6 plus 3 for a total of 10 into Junora, the Power Patron of Tuning. Of course, once you summon Junora, all of your opponent's face-up cards will then be negated. Furthermore, you can use Elfnote Power Patron's effect to add back the Lucinia, or add a Lucinia, or any Elfnote card from your deck to your hand. Then we can use the Rhapsodia to send the Elfnote monster you added, or any other monster, from your hand to the graveyard, in order to revive the Fortuna, and now Fortuna lets you bounce a spell or a trap card. So that's not only how you set up the end board, but then how you would go about using all of those disruptions. So there we go, that is the Wave 1 combo line, but again, this requires you to not only have Medius the Pure, but another monster card to send. Later combo lines do not have this restriction. Let's see some of those. Alright, so now I'm going to show you a combo line starting with Medius the Pure and no other cards, using Elfnote Regina, but none of the other Power Patron follow-up support. There's a reason specifically why I'm only using Regina and none of the other stuff, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the video. And don't worry, I'm also going to show you a combo line with the Power Patron stuff later. For now though, with Regina, but none of the other Power Patron cards, here's the combo line you can perform. going into our main phase, we're going to normal summon Medius the Pure, and then use the effect to summon out the Elfnote Power Patron before going into our Medies. Again, if you don't want to play Fiendsmith, you could put the Elfnote Power Patron in the center and go for Omega and do a hand rip instead. But we are playing the Fiendsmith line. Either way, you're going to want to use the Elfnote Power Patron to add Lucina. Here is, again, the very basic Fiendsmith line of going Necroquip into Engraver into Caesar. Now we're going to special summon Lucina, and we're going to summon we're going to add, the Elfnote Regina. This was not part of Wave 1, and was not part of that combo line, and you're about to see just how much this card improves the combo line. We can go Regina, effect, send Lucina, summon to the main monster zone, center main monster zone, and then use the effect to summon Tinia from our deck. Now Tinia can place the Welcome Home F, send Tinia for Fortuna, Fortuna place Rhapsodia, Rhapsodia send Tinia, or Fortuna rather, in order to add back the Elfnote Power Patron. Now we can tune the two of these into the Seraphim, which I should have summoned in defense mode, but now we can go into the Seraphim, and that'll let us actually use Regina's effect in order to add her back to our hand. That's very, very nice. So we're going to use Seraphim effect, revive Tinia, and now pass into the opponent's turn. This looks really similar to our last turn 1 end board with Wave 1, but this time, instead of having Lucina on the field, we have Regina in hand, which is going to be better. So here's how to use this end board. During your opponent's draw phase, you can go Tinia effect, swap with Seraphim, banish a random card. Then you can also use Regina effect, send the Tinia from the center main monster zone to special her to the center main monster zone. Regina F summons an Elfnote Power Patron from your deck. Then during your opponent's main phase, you can use Seraphim F to summon out Lucina. Lucina has the ability to bounce an opponent's monster by swapping into the center main monster zone. After that, you can go ahead and then use the Elfnote Power Patron effect in order to synchro summon. Remember also that we're using the Seraphim level adjust effect on summon. That way our stuff drops down to level 3, except for the center main monster zone card, which Elfnote Power Patron bumps up to level 6. So now we can go 1 plus 3 plus 6 equals 10 with a tuner and 2 non-tuners. There is the Junora. Now you can go Chainlink 1 Junora, negate everything. Chainlink 2 Regina, add herself back. And Chainlink 3 search. Actually, you'd probably want to go Chainlink 3, Chainlink 2 search, and Chainlink 3 Regina add back, but I don't think it would really matter too much. But yeah, now you can go Rhapsodia effect, send to Seraphim, revive Fortuna. Fortuna can bounce by swapping into the center main monster zone, any face-up spell or trap card. So, as you can see, we were able to put out pretty much the same amount of disruption that we did with the previous combo line, but not only did we do it with only the one Medius and no other cards in hand to help, but this also adds a lot of follow-up to very easily OTK going into your opponent's next turn. You can Regina, send to Fortuna, summon to center, summon something from deck, and yeah, rest is pretty much history from there. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a truly full power Elfnote combo line, starting with the spell card Unleash Power Patron Portal Terminus. So, if we begin with this spell card, we can activate it, sending Elfnote Power Patron from our deck to the graveyard in order to add Medius the Pure from our deck to our hand. Now we'll normal summon Medius the Pure, and we'll add from our deck to our hand Vidolium, the Power Patron of Chaos Extermination. I know I kind of implied when talking about this card that you would be summoning it, but actually its most common use is for this combo line. We're going to use it as an extender within the combo line. We'll pentascale it, then activate to destroy and revive the Elfnote Power Patron. Now, the Vidolium effect gets to activate, and now we can add the, let's see here, the Junoldo, the Power Patron Shadow Spirit. We get to add that from our deck to our hand. Okay, from here, we're going to go into our Medies. Again, if you want Omega, put Elfnote Power Patron in the middle, bump its level up by 3, and there you go. And now we get to add the Lucina. Now we're going to do Fiendsmith stuff, setting up our Caesar with the Necroquip, the same way we have in the previous lines. Putting back our Medies to revive the Engraver, there's Caesar. Now here's Lucina for Regina. Regina send Lucina to summon, and then we can summon Tinia from deck. Tinia is going to place Welcome Home. Welcome home F, send Tinia for Fortuna, and then Fortuna plays Rhapsodia. And now we're going to pen to scale the Junoldo. Now you might be wondering, but Hex, why wouldn't you do that sooner? You're missing out on the draw 2, discard 1, doing that sooner rather than later. But you actually want to do it later, because we don't want to draw either of these continuous quick play or spell cards, right? They need to be placed from the deck onto the field. So that's why we wait on actually pen to scaling the Junoldo. Then we can go Rhapsodia effect, send Tinia, revive the Elfnote Power Patron, and from there we can use Junoldo's effect to draw 2 and discard 1. Of course, we can also add back Fortuna from our graveyard to our hand when Junoldo activates and destroys itself. So now we're going to go into the Seraphim. This time for this combo line, we're actually not going to put Seraphim in the center because we can use the effect of... we can use the effect of the Elfnote Fortuna that we added back off the Junoldo, and then we can special summon. Now we can go Seraphim effect, reviving the Elfnote Power Patron, level adjust the Fortuna up to 9, and then 1+9 is the Baron de Fleur, level 10. You want to put that in the extra monster zone specifically. That way you are keeping your 3 main monster zones open to be able to make Junoldo the Power Patron of tuning during your opponent's turn. So you can pretty easily see just how much better the Elfnote deck gets with this Power Patron support, right? And once this deck is at full power, then it really truly becomes a force to be reckoned with. Not that it wasn't like super weak beforehand, but I mean, obviously adding an Omni Negate to your combo line is going to be really solid. Okay, so now that I've shown you all 3 of these combo lines, I'm going to show you some different builds here. Okay, we're going to start with the Wave 1 build, and again, the main reason that I'm showing off all 3 of these different builds is because at the time of recording this, I actually am not sure exactly how many of the Elfnote cards are going to end up being in, the selection pack. So better safe than sorry. Kind of like with Cool Tune last time, I'm going to show you basically all of the different waves here. Now with all of these builds, you'll notice that the main and extra decks are not complete. Like I only have 32 cards in the main and 13 in the extra. That's because more than anything, I wanted to give you a template and then you could flesh out the rest of the list from there. It's going to be true of all 3 lists I show you. There's a ton of different things that you could add. You could always add more hand traps. You could do an extended Fiendsmith engine with the Fiendsmith's Lacrima and in the extra deck, and then Lacrima the Crimson Tears, as well as Fabled Lurie, all that fun stuff. There's also Super Poly as a board breaker. This deck does have the space in both the main and the extra deck to play it. And also within the extra deck, there's a ton of pretty optional stuff, like the Dragite and the Black Rose Dragon. You don't need those, but they are kind of handy to have around. Crystal Wing does come up a little bit more often, just because you can go Elfnote Power Patron plus the Seraphim, that's 1+7, using a non-tuner Synchro monster to make the Crystal Wing. But yeah, as far as Wave 1 goes, this is the template I would use for that. And now here is the template that I would use for like a full power build with all of the follow-up Power Patron support. It's pretty similar, just adding those extra cards for the new support, but the ratios are slightly different. With the new Power Patron support, I like having 3 Elfnote Power Patron because you do need to send one from the deck in order to set up your plays with the Terminus. And only 1 Welcome Home is really needed with how consistent the deck gets moving forward. But this is going to include the new Power Patron Pendulum cards like Junoldo and Vidolium, and then of course also the Portal Terminus as mentioned. So yeah, like I said, when Power Patron gets full power, when Power Patron gets full power, all of the lore decks from Medius the Pure will benefit from that as well. I think Elfnote is the biggest winner, getting a lot more powerful and being able to utilize not only the Elfnote specific Power Patron card, Junoldo, but using Vidolium as a mid-combo extender is really nice as well. This build also, of course, again puts the Baron de Fleur on the board, and having an extra Omni Negate certainly makes your end board a lot more fearsome. But there is actually one more build I want to show you real quick here. Okay, so for this list, you'll notice that I have the Reginas in here, but none of the follow-up Power Patron support, and I'm on three Theo-Realize, well, I'll say that 5 times fast, instead of the Terminus. And you might be wondering, well, why is that? So, when it comes to release order in Master Duel, they do often change things around quite a bit, and I have a little bit of a prediction here. I think the way they're going to release Elfnote is they're going to give us Regina with Wave 1 support. But I think that Power Patron is going to be its own wave of support in a later selection pack. That makes sense to me, right? Because Power Patron is its own archetype, and if they try to jam Elfnote and also all of those Power Patron cards in the same selection pack, Konami's going to be missing out on a lot of UR taxing on the Power Patron archetype. So my prediction, and I could be wrong about this, is that we're basically going to get Wave 1 plus Regina. Now, the nice thing about this, actually, is that Elfnote is pretty strong with Regina, even without the Power Patron stuff. It turns out in the OCG, a lot of the initial Elfnote builds weren't even using the Power Patron stuff to begin with. Now they definitely are, but the initial lists were using Regina, and they were also using Junoldo, but not Vidolium. And for the combo line that I found with those lists, you don't even need the Junoldo to combo off. That's what I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about Junoldo. Some of you might have been a little bit confused. I should have been a little bit more clear, but I was also kind of setting up for this reveal here towards the end. So, yeah, again, I think when it comes to Master Duel, we're going to get Regina, but we're not going to get the Power Patron Portal Terminus, nor will we get Junoldo or Vidolium. Could be wrong about that. I don't know. I don't have any insight or information. So this is just my guess. But this would make sense to me, right? So that's why I showed that combo line, and that's why I wanted to talk about this specific build here a little bit. And again, as always, or as rather with the other 2 builds I showed, you can feel free to fill in the rest of the main and extra deck with whatever you want. Here, I think I'd be a little bit more inclined to try to maybe play more of a Fiendsmith engine. Although, to be fair, this build also only has 12 hand traps. That's only 12, I know. So, if you want to play more hand traps, I think that's also, you know, definitely understandable. You could also very easily just cut either, like, Omega or Dragite from this extra deck, and then play 3 Super Poly, and then your main Super Poly targets of, you know, Garura, Mud Dragon, and Sea Monster of Theseus for Cool Tune. So, a lot of different options that you could fill out the rest of the list. I just wanted to show you a template of a lot of the cards that I think you should be playing for both the engine and, of course, hand traps into off-engine here as well. Now, when it comes to countering this deck, Elfnote, I will say, is a little bit more susceptible to hand traps than certain other decks in the current metagame. Other decks have kind of inherent ways to play around or even through certain hand traps, but unfortunately, for a lot of Elfnote's initial plays, you really are just going to have to hope that either your opponent doesn't have anything or you have an extender. This, I think, is a lot of the reason why, like in the OCG, where both Elfnote and Cool Tune are at full power, we're seeing Cool Tune still very much outperform a deck like Elfnote. Don't get me wrong, Elfnote's still really, really good in the OCG at full power, but again, its main weakness is not being able to push through hand traps quite as much, which in 2026 Yu-Gi-Oh! I think is becoming a lot more of a factor. It's not just how consistent is your deck and how strong is the end board, now it's how do you handle either hand traps or turn 0 plays from the opponent. I guess this deck is also a little bit weak in that sense that it doesn't have turn 0 plays. You think about like Cool Tune, obviously with Clip, Draco Tail with Fine Mena, Canine Vanquish Soul with Holly Sue and Izana. A lot of the other meta decks right now have a lot of those turn 0 plays, which again, Elfnote lacks, which again is more of a symptom of 2026 Yu-Gi-Oh! More than anything else. It being a weakness that you can't just combo on your opponent's turn. But again, Elfnote is still a very strong deck. That said, if you are looking to counter it, here's how you can do so. Medius the Pure is going to be one of the more common starters. They'll either normal summon it or, you know, special summon with its own effect after sending with Theo-Realize or, you know, Power Patron Portal Terminus for Medius the Pure. But Regardless of the circumstance, if you Valor or Imperm or Ash Blossom Medius the Pure and your opponent doesn't have any extenders in their hand, like that's it. They can't combo anymore. They're just done. So early Medius the Pure is a pretty good negation target and a pretty safe bet overall. Your opponent might also start their combos potentially with like Elfnote Lucina by special summoning to the center main monster zone and then trying to add a monster, or Tinia being able to special summon and then go for the Welcome Home, which can then special summon a monster. These are both also susceptible to Valor and Imperm. Of course, not Ash Blossom because they don't add. Well, Lucina can be Ash Blossom because she adds. Tinia places the Welcome Home from the deck face up on the field. So that cannot be Ash Blossomed. So Nibiru actually ends up being a pretty funny counter to the Elfnote deck. It's not very popular as a hand trap right now, because a lot of decks have inherent built-in ways of playing through or around it. And here for Elfnote, that's also actually pretty true, right? We've got the Fiendsmith line to go into Caesar. However, not every Elfnote deck is on Fiendsmith, but more importantly, even if your Elfnote deck is on Fiendsmith, Nibiru can still really end up messing your day up if they activate it and specifically put the token in the center main monster zone. Now, this is going to end up being a pretty huge issue for the Elfnote deck. You might be thinking, well, sure, you can temporarily block the center main monster zone, but Elfnote has plenty of cards that send a monster from the hand or field to the graveyard, so that can free it up, right? But therein lies the wording. If we read a lot of the Elfnote cards, like Regina and Welcome Home, they have a cost or condition to specifically send a card from the field to the graveyard. Regina actually has to send an Elfnote card, so that can't even send the Nib token. But even then, Welcome Home, now there, it has to send a monster to the graveyard specifically as a cost to activate. Tokens, however, cannot go to the graveyard. And therein lies Nibiru's true ability to counter the Elfnote deck. In fact, if you look at a lot of Elfnote extra decks, I don't really have it in mind, but if you look at a lot of Elfnote extra decks, you will actually see Link Spider. And this is the entire reason why they play Link Spider, because of how devastating Nibiru can be. And again, the really funny part here is that it's not even the board wipe from Nib that's devastating. It's actually just putting a token in the center main monster zone. Elfnote doesn't have a lot of reliable ways to get it out of there except for Link Spider. So I can imagine a lot of people running into this where they don't play Link Spider until they get nibbed once, and then you're going to play Link Spider every single time. So definitely wanted to mention Nibiru specifically here, though, as a counter to the Elfnote strategy. A very funny one at that. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up this guide here. Now, hopefully you found the information here helpful. Again, just like with the Cool Tune guide that I made last month, I really wanted to make sure that we're all well in advance ready for when this deck drops. And since we don't know all the waves that we're going to get, that's why we covered it as extensively as we did. Again, I also think it's pretty beneficial to look at all these different waves because it shows you how the deck evolves and grows and just why this follow-up support is so important. And even if we don't get stuff like Regina or some of the follow-up Power Patron support, now you can still use the Wave 1 information and have knowledge of how this deck gets better in the future. So again, hopefully the information here was of use to you. Thank you, as always, for those of you who are watching. If you watched the whole video all the way up to this point, I want to give you an especially huge thanks, because that is one of the best ways that you can support not just me, but any smaller YouTube channel. And speaking of that support, we also have to give some extra special thank you to, as mentioned at the top, our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. Really can't thank you all enough. We do thank you in the credits, but still, that doesn't feel like enough to me, because I really would not be able to devote the time and energy that I do to putting out all this Master Duel content without your support. So thank you all so very much. But As mentioned, we do also thank those members by name in the credits, so we're going to go ahead and do so now. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.